Now, when I start with this question, everyone please read the question. So it says that if the distance between the foci of an ellipse is 6, distance between the foci, and the distance between its directrices is 12, okay, then the length of its latus rectum. So what they have given, they've given me the distance between foci, distance between the directrices, and they're asking for the length of the latus rectum. So they are talking only about the length, distances or the length. Right? Are they talking about anything in terms of equation? No, they are. No, they are not. So now, what is the first thing that should come to your mind? Whether I'm taking a horizontal ellipse or I'm taking the vertical ellipse, it doesn't change our answer. Doesn't matter. See, in this question, it's not given whether it's a horizontal ellipse, whether it's a vertical ellipse, or it's a tilted one. Nothing. Doesn't matter. Because even if you try to rotate it also, if the length of the latus rectum here is, let's say, some k units, so here also it will remain the k unit. Here also it will remain the k unit only if you keep on rotating it like this. Right? So in all such question, I will suggest you that you start with the horizontal ellipse only, so that it's the most standard one and the most simplest one. So it's advisable that you begin and move your calculation with the horizontal ellipse only. Perfect? Okay. So if I move on with the information of this question, what do I have it here? They say that the distance between the foci, that is S and S dash, this length is given to me as 6. Okay. Then they say that the distance between their directrices is 12. That is, if I have directrice here and here, so I'm calling the directrice as D and this as D dash, the lines, right? So this distance is given to me as 12. Then they're asking me the length of the latus rectum. See, latus rectum has to pass through the focus. So they're asking me the length of this, which is LL dash, if I can talk it in that way. All the lengths are given to me, right? So what do I have it here? See, I know that the standard foci for ellipse are a, 0 and minus a, 0. So the distance between the foci is given to me, which is SS dash as 6, which implies that 2AE is nothing but 6. See, I'm a student. I've figured out that, okay, that it could be horizontal, vertical, doesn't matter because they are all distances so far. The moment when I've decided this, I'll start my calculation very quickly with the standard result that I know. I know that the distance between foci is 2AE. I'll immediately put the value and I'll reach to the result that A into E is nothing but 3. In the very similar fashion, I'll quickly move on to the distance between directrices. That is nothing but 2A by E. And that is nothing given to me as 12, which implies that A by E is nothing but equal to 6. All right. Did you get the idea how we are reaching to this result? Perfect. Everyone, if you want to give it a good try, please try it right now. You have to report your answer before me. All right? Good. Quickly. Please solve it. Get the pen and paper ready. Start solving it. You know the options. Start the drill. I'll begin with the question in a proper way. So everyone, please look into the solution if you want to refer to how we are solving it. Let the equation of the ellipse is this. So I've assumed A greater than B. Doesn't matter which one you're taking because we are talking about only distances or length. We are not at all interested in the equations, right? So whether it's a vertical or horizontal or rotated, it's not at all going to change my answer. So for my easy sake or for my comfort zone or for my speed in the examination hall, I'll start with the horizontal one, right? Because this gives me the quickest way to get the results. Perfect. So as I told you, the distance between foci is given as 6. The distance between the directrices is given as 12. So I have these two results right quickly. So I can say that A into E is equal to 3. A by E equal to 6. When I multiply these two, what do I got? We got LHS with the LHS, RHS with the RHS. This gives me nothing but A square equal to 18. Wow, we quickly reached to that result. A square equal to 18. Lovely. Now, I know that the length of the latus rectum is nothing but 2B square by A. So I know that length of latus rectum, so length of the latus rectum is nothing but is equal to 2B square by A. Perfect. Okay, so my aim is to figure out the value for B square. All right, what do I have? I have A into E. Now, the moment this A into E strike to your mind and you know that you have to figure out B square, immediately that's another thing which comes to your mind is that A square E square is nothing but equal to A square minus B square. Standard, pretty standard result. You have A into E, you have A square, you figured it out, and you're looking for B square. This is the first thing which will come to your mind. The moment when you plug in the value, A square, E square, A into E is 3, so A square, E square is 9, A square is 18. So what do I got? Value of B square. B square also becomes equal to what? 9. As simple as it sounds. Now what do I have the length of the latus rectum? So my length of the latus rectum is nothing but 2B square by A. So what is B square? B square I have figured out as 9. A as A square as 18, so A is simply root 18, right? So when I simplify it further, what do I have it here? So from here, we can say that this is nothing but 18 upon root 18, right? 9 to 0. So this gives me what? This gives me nothing but simply root 18. right? And root 18, you can also write it as simply nothing but as 3 root 2, right? So I can say that the length of the lattice rectum becomes is equal to 3 root 2. Figure it out. Pretty simple one, right? Immediately move on to the D option, correctly take it, click it properly, and then move on to the answer. All right, everyone understood it, how we are doing the drill? So the key takeaway was in this question, every time you don't have to worry about, right? If you're dealing only with the distances, it's not advisable for you to think about the rotation or vertical or doesn't matter, right? You just have to start with one ellipse because if only distances, and distances never change if you rotate the geometry in any direction, right? Okay, all right. Now these questions are very, very simple ones, right? These are very, very logical ones and you know how to draw the truth table. If you don't know, I would suggest you quickly refer to any reference book or any material, right? Or you can watch any other videos at Byju's. We have plenty of videos available on this logical reasoning. So the chapter is logical reasoning. I hope everyone knows that. So refer to that. We have solved many such truth tables over there. Immediately start solving it. Within a day of practice, you will be able to crack one question in the mains examination, which is not a bad deal, guys. All right, let's quickly move with the logical statement. P implies Q. The other symbol is for and, you know, right? The other one is Q implies negation of P. This is equivalent to. We also call this this symbol of implies as if P then Q and if Q then not P. Then what does that mean to? The answers are negation of P, P, Q, negation of Q. Now, there are ways to work it out, but I'm intentionally showing it with the help of the truth table, right? And everyone please listen carefully. I will be showing you the truth table, all the results, and I'll be explaining it very quickly, right? It's easy to understand, it's simple to handle, and it doesn't take much time even to draw it in the examination. So if you are getting even the slightest of confusion, please immediately draw the truth table. It saves a lot of time, and then your speed, your practice with this truth table beforehand will actually make the difference. So some people can actually solve this within 30 seconds. Trust me, there are people who solve it within 30 seconds, right? And if you keep on practicing, you will be also able to. So this is what my table looks like. Let me start with the P, right? Everyone please start looking it from the left side, all right? Please ignore the results on the right. I'll get you to there, but you have to listen on the left hand side. So P, we have taken the options as truth, truth, false, false. Then Q, I've taken the observation as truth, false, right? So that we can have different possibilities. Now the table for if P then Q, that by default you will be able to remembering that if I have true and true, so if P then Q, so if I have true, then it remains true. If I have true, then false, it remains as false. Then if I have false and then true, then it remains as true. And if I have false, then false, it will also comment as true only. So that's how my truth table. T, F, T, T. Can you see this? If P then Q, T, F, T, T. Sorted? So for these results are T, F, T, T in this fashion. Now I have P. P was T, T, F, F. Can you see this P? T, T, F, F. What will I be doing? I'll be just changing it for the negation P. So negation, what does negation do? It reverses the statement, right? So if a statement is true, the negation of truth is what? False, of course. So if I have T, T, F, F, it will become F, F, T, T. So we got this as F, F, T, T. Sorted. Now what will I be applying? I'll be applying the truth table between Q and negation of P. So please apply the truth table for these two. For if Q, then negation P. So I have true F. That will give me what? Simply F or false. Then the next one, if I have false, so if false, then if false, if first statement is false, then the second statement is also false, then it becomes the resultant as true. Similarly, when I go for the next one as true and the second one also as true, it remains as true, that you already know. And the last one, if I have false, and if the second one is true, we say that the resultant effectively becomes what? True. What do I have it here? F, T, T, T. Okay, so F, T, T, T. False, true, true, true. Can you relate it to either of the columns here? See, my options were P, negation P, Q, negation Q. Please try to relate, right? So I'll see now the AND table. Okay, let's quickly see the AND table of it. So what will be the AND result that I'll be applying? I'll be applying the AND result between this and this. AND operator says that if either of the statement is false, the resultant has to be false. Only if both the statements are true, then only the resultant statement will be true. Now look carefully. All right, I'm erasing all this so that you can be very much aware what I'm doing here. Right, everyone, please look carefully. So I'm only dealing with these two and this, right? Okay, now look carefully. As I said, and operator is there, then if either of the statement is false, the resultant has to be false. Only if both the statements are true, then only the resultant statement will be true. Okay. So if I have true, I'm using these circles which I've created here. So if the first statement is true and the second is false, then and operator will make it eventually as false. Sure. If I have first statement as false and the second statement as true, since either of them is false, the resultant has to be false. All right. Then if both of them are true, then only the resultant becomes true. Perfect. And similarly, if both of them are true, the resultant becomes what? True. Perfect. So this is what my outcome is. Now, please, I'm ignoring all these results. Just see the last column, We have FFTT. Compare it with P, Q, negation P, negation Q. Quickly check that. So P is true, true, false, false. But the resultant is false, false, true, true. Just reverse of that. Okay. Q is true, false. Not matching. Negation P, false, false, true, true. Oh, this is exactly the same. What does it mean? It means that clearly the if P then Q and if Q then negation P is nothing but equal to negation of P. Hence, take the option A and you get the answer. See, if some of you might not have practiced these questions, you might find it a bit new, right? Not difficult, new. So I'll suggest you, please refer to the video solutions at Byju's, right? And you can easily see it has been taught very quickly, and just by learning this very simple chapter, you will be able to crack one question in mains examination, which is really not a bad deal. All right, guys, lovely. Okay, so practice it well, right? Just a little amount of hard work will fetch you one correct answer. So this is definitely doable. All right. All right, everyone. So let's quickly move on to this question. And by the question itself, you have to reach to that chapter. And then within that chapter, then you have to recall and quickly scroll all the pages of all the concepts, right? Okay, let's quickly. The greatest positive integer k for which 49 to the power k plus 1 is a factor of the sum. That sum is given. Greatest positive integer k for which 49 raised to k plus 1 is a factor. Where have you seen this question or said this kind of question? Not exactly this question, you may or may not. But where exactly is these kind of question you have seen? Can you read it to? Chapter is binomial theorem. Yes, that's how you have to think about it. Okay, guys, keep the concepts of binomiality where we have talked about the concept of divisibility or a factor related to that. Right? Guys, please start doing it. So first of all, my aim is to consider that sum which is given to me. Okay. So this is what the sum is given to me. I know the formula, it's a simple GP. I'll quickly figure it out. So what do I have it here? How many number of terms? 126. We start with 49 raised to 0, 49 raised to 1, so until 49 raised to 125. So in total number of terms in GP are 126. So what is the result? We get A into R, which is 49, raised to the power n, that is number of terms, 126 minus 1, divide by 49 minus 1. Okay, so now they say that, okay, I hope people remember what were the options. So they say that the greatest integer k for which 49 raised to k plus 1 is a factor. And my options are 32, 60, 65, 60. That will figure it out. But the only thing is that you have to keep that in mind that 49 raised to k plus 1 has to be a factor. Right? This is the underlying statement which you have to always keep in your mind. Then only you will be able to relate it. Now, look for this thing. What eventually or where eventually I have reached to? I have reached to this result, right? Okay, so this was my summation, right? And I got the summation value as like this. And I know the denominator we have got 48. The problem is that if I'm looking for a factor, I'll try to get rid of this 48. Then only I can successfully predict this particular term or generate it as a factor. So let's do all the possibilities to simplify it. All right. So for that matter, I have to generate 49 raised to k. Perfect. So 49 raised to k plus 1. Here we have 49 raised to 126 minus 1. Can I reach to a result as a raised to k minus 1 to a raised to k or k2 plus 1? Something like, think in that way. If I have a minus b, I want to reach to a plus b. Or let's say if I have something x minus y, from there I want to reach to the addition of those two or addition of two terms of that sort. Any result? Any result? Yes. Logically, a square minus b square will eventually lead me to a plus b into a minus b. That's how you think as a student. You have to logically connect it. I have the difference of two terms here, 49 raised to 126 minus 1, and there I have to create a factor as 49 raised to k plus 1. Which means I have to figure out the subtraction of those two terms as an addition of those two another two terms. And that can eventually and successfully be popped up as the identity of a square minus b square equal to a plus b into a minus b. Lovely. Right? Okay, let's quickly figure it out then. So where have I reached? I've reached this to be as, I can quickly call it as 49 raised to 126. So I can call this as 49 raised to 63 the whole square minus 1 square. I'm erasing this. Divide by 48. Are you getting that? So I got p square minus q square. So I can write p plus q into p minus q. Lovely. So we got 49 raised to 63 plus 1, 49 raised to 63 minus 1, divide by 48. But till the time I cannot get rid of this 48, I cannot be assured about this term, like any term of that to be a factor. Right? If I want this particular term to be a factor, I have to first of all get rid of this 48 in the denominator, because I don't know whether this 49 raised to 63 plus 1 can actually be dissolved with 48 further. I cannot be assured. So denominator 48, the term in the denominator as 48 has to be dissolved. Right? I'll not disturb this plus 1 thing, because I know that has to be created. I'll disturb everything with this, the other term, which has a minus sign in that, right? Okay. Now, how shall I do that? I know that in binomial, we have studied with something like this. So I have 49 raised to 63 minus 1 and divide by 48. 49, 48. 49 is nothing but 48 plus 1. Okay. So can I write that, something of that sort? I know that the first bracket is not supposed to be touched, right? Because the plus 1 thing that I have to create, because of that only I've done this modification. Denominator, we have 48. Pretty good to go. Then the other term has to be modified. Okay. So we got this. Now 49 raised to 63, I intentionally want to write this as 1 plus 48 raised to 63 minus 1. Why? Because I know that 48 is in the denominator and I have to get rid of this denominator thing. Now, the moment you have reached to the situation, you know that 1 plus 48 raised to 63. So with the help of the binomial theorem, we can easily figure it out. This is nothing but 1 plus 48 lambda thing. I'm sure this you are very much aware of it, where lambda is nothing but an integer or k is nothing but an integer. If you put it up in that way, k is already there, so I cannot use it. I'm using lambda. So this is nothing but 1 plus 48. Or in fact, if you want to put it up in this way, this is nothing but 63c0 plus 63c1 48 raised to 1 and so on, 63c63 48 raised to 63. I know that other than the first term, which is 1, all the other terms are multiple of 48. So they all can be written as 1 plus 48 lambda. Lovely. Let's put it there. Well, lambda could be any integer, right? Lambda could be any natural number, precisely. So this thing has become 49 raised to 63 plus 1. Then 1 plus 48 raised to 63 can be written as 1 plus 48 lambda minus 1 divided by 48. So this 1 and 1 got cancelled. What do I have it here? We can cancel this 48 also. Exactly. That's what the situation is, right? So I'm reaching here as 49 raised to 63 plus 1 multiplied by 48 lambda divided by 48. This 48 got cancelled. I have 49 raised to 63 plus 1. Okay. Multiplied by some integer lambda. Right? And if this is the case, the greatest positive integer value k, right, for 49 raised to k plus 1 to be a factor. So if I am comparing it with 49 raised to k plus 1 as a factor, we have a factor as 49 raised to 63. So the value of k becomes nothing but equal to what? Simply the value of k will become nothing but is equal to 63. See, the moment when you compare this with 49 raised to k plus 1, I'll write it here. So this is to be compared 49 raised to k plus 1. So k becomes 63. So that's the greatest integer which we can report here. Understood the logic how we are breaking it? And this is very, very logical, right? It's highly logical. You have to connect every step very logically. How am I getting? So in the denominator, if I have 48, I need to dissolve that. 49 and 48 are related by 49 as 48 plus 1. When I open it up, I can write this 1 plus 48 raised to 63 as nothing but 1 plus 48 lambda. The moment when I plug in the value into the original expression, 1 got cancelled. Hence, eventually 48 also got cancelled from the denominator. So I have 49 raised to 63 plus 1 into some integer lambda. So I can surely say that 49 raised to 63 plus 1 is a factor. And if it is a factor, I have been given the factor as 49 raised to k plus 1. But I am getting as 49 raised to 63 plus 1. That explains all. K is nothing but 63. Got it? Perfect. Hence, I'll be taking the D option as the correct answer. Connect everything. Every chapter, every concept has some insights, right? And they try to give you some quick tricks. Here, 49 to be written as 48 plus 1, one observation. Second one was to split the addition of, rather difference of two terms as the addition, right? I had 49 raised to 126 minus 1, but I have to reach to 49 raised to k plus 1. So from minus 1, I can reach to k plus 1 only if I can apply a square minus b square as a plus b into a minus b, right? This is the simplest formula which will strike to your mind. All right, understood? All right, everyone, please flex your muscles with now some trigonometry problems. So we have this expression. Please note down the question. If y of alpha, so everything is dependent upon alpha maybe, equal to under root of 2 times of tan alpha plus cot alpha divided by 1 plus tan square alpha plus 1 upon sin square alpha. Look, all very similar, very familiar expressions, right? We'll reach to them. Now, there is a restriction is given on alpha. Please be very careful. Whenever they put any restriction on alpha, you have to be extremely careful. So alpha belongs to 3 pi by 4 to pi, second quadrant. So in fact, also like particularly 135 to 180 degree. Okay, we'll keep that in mind. Then dy by d alpha at alpha equal to 5 pi by 6 is. Okay, see, they define it from 135 degree to 180 degree, right? And then they're asking at alpha is equal to 150 degree, which is a fair thought, right? So we can definitely put it up that way. And we have to ultimately define that expression for y alpha in the most simplified format. Then we'll be taking the derivative of that y alpha. Right. Now let's say if this is much of the information is with you and you have plenty of things. The first and the foremost thing which comes to your mind is please get rid of all the simplification. Simplify as much as you can. You see there are a lot of sine, tan, cos. Please convert everything in terms of sine and cos. Then you'll be able to quickly reach to a conclusion. It becomes easier for us to handle it in that way. Okay. All right. Let's quickly move on. So if I begin with the first one, my given expression for y alpha was this. So y alpha is nothing but under root of 2 times of tan alpha plus cot alpha divided by 1 plus tan square alpha plus 1 by sin square alpha. Okay, let me simplify that. So when I open it up and further simplify, we get this as 2 times of, here we have sin alpha by cos alpha plus cos alpha by sin alpha. This is the numerator part, right? Whole divided by 1 plus tan square alpha, this is nothing but secant square alpha as the denominator, plus 1 upon sin square alpha, which is nothing but cosec square alpha if you want to put it up in that way. Okay, so let's say if I said keep everything in terms of sine and cos. So let's follow initially and we'll see how the things are getting turned. Okay, so let's modify it further. So if I have sine alpha by cos alpha plus cos alpha by sine alpha, what do I have it here? So sine alpha by cos alpha plus cos alpha by sine alpha. That will give me nothing but is equal to, so the denominator, rather the LCM becomes equal to what? LCM becomes sine alpha cos alpha. Okay. What have I got it here? Sine square alpha plus cos square alpha. What is sine square alpha plus cos square alpha? 1. What eventually I reach to? 1 upon sine alpha cos alpha. Okay, so my expression got converted of y alpha as, so I can write y alpha is equal to under root of 2 times of 1 upon sine alpha cos alpha multiplied by sec square alpha, which is nothing but 1 upon cos square alpha. Right? Okay, and plus 1 upon sine square alpha. So let's first of all simplify. So when I cancel this cos alpha and cos alpha, we get this cos alpha 2 times of cos alpha by, okay, 2 outside. So we get 2 times of cos alpha by sine alpha plus 1 upon sine square alpha. Okay. Can I solve it further? Yes, of course I can. Of course I can further simplify it. How will I do that? This thing will become nothing but is equal to under root of 2 times of, so cos alpha by sine alpha is nothing but what? Cot alpha. So 2 times of cot alpha. Right, this is what we have here, and plus 1 upon sine square alpha. Now I have cot alpha and then I have 1 upon sine square alpha. I know that cot alpha and cosec alpha has a relation, so intentionally I'll be chasing 1 upon sine square alpha as cosec square alpha. Exactly. So I've written this 1 upon sine square alpha as cosec square alpha. So what do I have it here? I have under root of 2 cot alpha plus cosec square alpha. Okay, all right. Can I simplify it further? Yes. So y alpha becomes is equal to under root of 2 cot alpha plus cosec square alpha. I know the relation between cosec alpha and cot alpha. Cosec square alpha is nothing but 1 plus cot square alpha. Perfect. What do I have it here? I have this as 2 cot alpha plus 1 plus cot square alpha. this is nothing but a square plus b square plus 2ab. Yeah, exactly. This is nothing but under root of cot alpha plus 1 the whole square. So we get y alpha is equal to under root of 1 plus cot alpha the whole square. Okay. So although we have restrictions on, of course, the other one. So I'm raising this step so that you can see it clearly. Right? After modification, we reach to here under root of 2 cot alpha plus 1 plus cot square alpha, right? And from here, I've modified it to y alpha equal to under root of 1 plus cot alpha the whole square. Now, if I try to simplify further y alpha is, then it will become under root of a square is always what? Mod of that number. And that is the reason why this question has been asked in mains. Under root of a square is always absolute value of that number. The moment you miss it, you immediately going to get the incorrect answer. And trust me, the incorrect answer will also be an option. You have to be careful about it. If you report the answer incorrectly, right? If you take up the mod, if you forget the mod sign, you take it only simply plus x, then you will be reaching to the incorrect option. And that's the beauty of this problem. That's the beauty of the JEE main examination is. Right? Now please look carefully. Alpha goes from 3 pi by 4 to pi. Okay. Right. So cot alpha, rather 1 plus cot alpha. I have to check whether it's a positive value or a negative value. I know that in the second quadrant, cot is negative for sure. Okay. So let's quickly see the graph of cot alpha. If I can quickly draw the graph of cot alpha. Let's see. So the graph of cot alpha, that too also I want precisely from pi by 2 to pi. I know that at pi we have an asymptote. And at 3 pi by 4, the value is -1. So it starts from here and it goes somewhere like this. So it's basically less than -1. So cot alpha is less than -1. And if I'm adding 1 in that value, this value is what? Less than 0. And if the value inside if the term inside the modulus is less than 0 or negative, then the modulus open with the negative sign. Wow. Exactly, that's what the situation is. Right? Since in this particular defined interval, cot alpha is less than -1, so 1 plus cot alpha is less than 0. And if it is less than 0, then I know that the modulus value of y alpha will open up with the negative sign. We get minus of 1 minus cot alpha. This is what my ultimate y alpha is. And the moment when I have y alpha, what do I have to do? I need to differentiate that because that's what they have asked me. So they asked me dy by d alpha at alpha equal to 5 pi by 6. So we'll figure it out. First of all, let's judge what is dy by d alpha. So dy by d alpha, derivative of -1 is 0 and derivative of cot alpha is minus cosec square alpha, but minus of cot alpha will give me what? Plus cosec square alpha. Lovely. Now what they have asked me, they have asked me clearly the dy by dx, or rather, sorry, dy by d alpha at alpha equal to 5 pi by 6. So dy by d alpha at alpha equal to 5 pi by 6 is nothing but is equal to cosec square alpha at alpha equal to 5 pi by 6. And cosec alpha at 5 pi by 6 is what? 2. So this becomes what? 2 square. If it is 2 square, I can say that my answer will be nothing but 4. Right? Understood it? So there were two key takeaways. First of all, under root of a square is always the modulus of that number. Second thing, when you open up the mod, be very careful about the interval given to you. So in this interval, this quantity inside the modulus becomes negative, and the job of modulus is what? To make the number ultimately positive. So if a number is negative, modulus places a negative sign before that. So that negative of negative will become eventually what? Positive. If the term inside the modulus is negative, modulus places a negative sign before the negative number. So that negative of negative will ultimately become positive. That's what the job of modulus is, right? And then you put it up, simplify, get dy by d alpha, plug in the value of alpha is 5 pi by 6. The moment you do it, you get the value of dy by d alpha, rather cosec alpha at 5 pi by 6 is nothing but 2. And then we have cosec square alpha. So that will eventually lead me to what? 2 square is 4. And hence, according to the option C is the correct answer. Understood the key takeaway? First of all, simplify everything. Second thing, under root of a square is always the absolute value of any number. And if the term inside the modulus, if this number is negative, then modulus places a negative sign before the negative number, so that negative of negative will ultimately become positive number. Understood? Lovely. Now I'll welcome you to this question. You must have guessed what the chapter is. The chapter is parabola. Alright, so bring all the knowledge, quickly scroll all the pages and all the concepts. Not the pages, of course, you're in your mind only, right? In the examination hall, you scroll the pages of your brain, right? The register that you maintain in your brain. Okay, so just quickly register the question. If y equal to mx plus 4 is a tangent to both the parabolas, y square equal to 4x and x square equal to 2by, then b is equal to. Okay, so it's a tangent which is a tangent to the first parabola as well as the second parabola. Perfect. Now, in this question, what do? We know the basic formula that if I have the parabola as y square equal to 4ax, then a tangent having slope m for this parabola, the formula is y equal to mx plus a by m. So we can directly relate it. In fact, if you don't know it beforehand, let me tell you, I'll give you alternative way. Although in this question, I'll give you two methods, okay? But keep this information ready with you as far as the parabola is concerned. If you have a parabola as x square equal to 4by, then the equation of tangent having slope m for this parabola is nothing but y is equal to mx minus bm square. I want you to remember it. It's a standard result, and in the examination hall, if you get the parabola x square equal to 4by, I will suggest you to remember this result directly so that whenever required, we'll immediately apply it. Okay, so I'm giving you this information. You can try the question with this information. In fact, in the last, I'll solve it with this one. But now, as of now, let's say if some of you don't know this information, which after once I've taught you, you must remember this. But let's say if beforehand, if you don't know it, then what should I do? Then in that case, I want you to solve it by the general method. Okay. I hope this formula is everyone supposed to remember. Guys, you have to know this formula, right? The first one. Without this, nothing is expected. If you are trying to generate this result, you are just wasting your time in the examination hall. In an examination hall, every minute is crucial. Every minute. If you waste your 30 seconds in establishing this result, equation of tangent of slope m for the parabola y square equal to 4ax as y equal to mx plus a by m, you are just simply wasting your time. You are giving the rest of the India or the rest of all the competitors an extra edge of 1 minute. Please don't waste your time in that. Remember as many results for conics as possible. That's what the key takeaway, and that's what the real spirit for mains. And that's what the game-changing thing is mains. Okay? All right. So let's begin with the question. This is the another explanation that I'm giving you, another method. I'll give you the second method, the formula which I've just taught you. So with the help of that formula, I'll solve it in the last. Okay. Before that, I'll solve it. Let's say if you don't know the formula. Let's say if you don't recall it. So I'll begin with the first information that y equal to mx plus 4 is a tangent for the parabola y square equal to 4x and x square equal to 2by. Okay. The standard formula says that the equation of tangent having slope m for the parabola y square equal to 4x is y equal to mx plus a by m. Already informed you. Perfect. Okay. Now, so if I compare this given equation with this, I can say that, see, here in this question, my parabola is y square equal to 4x, which implies that what is a? A is 1. If a is 1, the equation of tangent will become y equal to mx plus 1 by m. But what is the equation of tangent that they have given me? They have given me nothing but this equation as y equal to mx plus 4. What does that mean? It clearly means that 1 by m is nothing but equal to 4. What do I have m as? I can say that my m is nothing but equal to 1 by 4. Lovely. So if I have m equal to 1 by 4, I can say that my revised equation of tangent is now y equal to x by 4 plus 4. See, I've already put the value of m as 1 by 4. The moment when I put the value of m as 1 by 4 here, you put m equal to 1 by 4 in this, you get the equation of tangent as modified one as y equal to x by 4 plus 4. So the equation of tangent is finally known to me. Now, I have to figure out the value of b. And I know that this equation is also a tangent to the parabola. This one, y equal to x by 4 plus 4, is also a tangent to the parabola x square equal to 2by. Now, please recall that theory. The theory was, if a line cuts a curve, so it might cut at 2 points, it might touch at 1 point, or it might remain completely outside. So if it intersects at 2 points, it means that if I solve their equation simultaneously, their discriminant must be greater than 0. That particular equation in one variable. So when you're solving the equation simultaneously, if it is the case of tangency, it has to be d equal to 0. And if it doesn't, neither touches nor intersects, it has to be d less than 0. What do I have the case here? We have this as tangent to this parabola, which means if I solve this equation of parabola with this line, or basically if I simultaneously solve their equation, so I need to simultaneously solving these equations. So let's say if I simultaneously solve these equations, right? Simultaneously solving, I'll write solving equations. For that, what will I do? I'll put y equal to x by 4 plus 4 in the second equation. So that will become x square. So I'll be actually putting y equal to x by 4 plus 4 in this equation. So I'll get x square is equal to 2b into x by 4 plus 4. Okay, all right. Now, if I take up the LCM and simplify everything, I'll multiply by 4 on the left hand side and simplify everything. What do I have it here? I have it here as, okay, so we have this x square equal to 2by. This equation, after taking that 4 on that side and simplified further, in fact, after LCM cutting the 2 and all, you'll get this 2x square minus bx minus 16b. If you want, I can solve it. See, this is nothing but, I'll take that, I'll multiply by 4. So we get 4x square is equal to 2 into other. Here, this is nothing but 2b into x plus 16 by 4, and this 4 will get cancelled. This 2 will also cancel this. So we get this as 2x square minus bx minus 16b. Okay, so I got a quadratic by simultaneously solving the parabola and the line. But I know that if they have to touch, then the only possibility that the discriminant of the quadratic has to be equal to 0. Remember that idea? If you don't remember the formula, what will you do? If you don't remember the standard formula, what will you do? You just solve the equation of parabola and the line, right? And if the discriminant is equal to 0, it has to be a tangent. If discriminant is greater than 0, this is a case of secant. And if d is less than 0, it neither touches nor intersects. Perfect? Lovely. So this is what my quadratic is. I know that if it has to be a tangent, discriminant has to be 0. The moment when I make discriminant equal to 0, we get this as b square minus 4 into a into c. Okay, so what do I got here? We got to say b square minus, so we get 16, 4, 8. So 16 is the 144, 128, sorry. So we get 128 with a plus sign equal to 0. Okay, which implies that b into b plus 128 equal to 0, which implies that the value of b is either 0 or b equal to minus 128. But the problem is the parabola is x square equal to 2by. Can b be 0? If b will become 0, we'll not have a parabola even. So b equal to 0 has to be rejected, right? So b equal to 0 is not possible. Perfect. Then what is the possibility? The only possibility that b equal to minus 128. Hence, I'll be reporting b equal to minus 128. Understood it? Sure, everyone? Clear cut? No doubts? Perfect. So this is what my answer, minus 128. So what was the idea? We first taken the standard equation and then we compared with the standard equation for the parabola y square equal to 4ax. From there, we have eventually found out the value for m, which turns out to be 1 by 4. When I plugged in the value of m in the given equation, in the question itself, this y equal to mx plus 4, when I put m equal to 1 by 4, we got y equal to x by 4 plus 4. So now I have the equation of tangent and I have the second parabola as x square equal to 2by. Then we solve their equation simultaneously. We generated a quadratic. If it has to be tangent, d equal to 0, and we got the value of b. Sorted? One value of b equal to 0 got omitted or rejected because that will not result me a parabola. Hence, b equal to minus 128 has been accepted. So hence, C option is the correct answer. Now, I was talking about the alternative solution in which I said that please remember the formula. So I said that for x square equal to 4by, the equation of tangent having slope m is y equal to mx minus bm square. Right? Okay. Now, what is the parabola that I have here? X square equal to 2by. So b has to be replaced by b by 2. And I know that from the calculation, we have already figured out m equal to 1 by 4. So let's plug in the values. So what do I got it here? When I put the values and simplified further, we get this as y equal to x by 4 and b turns out to be nothing but as b by 2. Are you getting that? Because we have 4by here. Here we have 2by. So my b is actually nothing but b dash or b by 2. So this becomes nothing but is equal to b by 2 and m square is nothing but 1 by 4. Okay, what do I have it here? So this is nothing but bm square basically. So this becomes 1 by 4 whole square. Okay. So, but the original equation of tangent was y equal to x by 4 plus 4. So if I compare only the constants, this and this, I can say that minus b, so for 16 to 32 is equal to plus 4. Which implies that b equal to minus 4 into 32 So B becomes equal to minus of 4 into 32, which eventually is nothing but equal to minus of 128. This is exactly the same B that you got from the previous calculation. So it's better sometimes to remember these formula, plug in the values, compare the equations directly and get the answers, right? See, this was the equation of tangent given to me. This we have used the formula and then generated. But both the equations are nothing but the same. Hence, they will represent the same equation. So all the coefficients has to be equal, as the y and the x coefficient are equal. So the constant term also has to be equal. The constant term in the first equation was minus b by 32. In the second equation, it was 4. I've taken the 32 on that side and we got b equal to minus 128. All right, understood? So there were two methods. Both of them are equally good and you might require both of them at any stage. I will suggest you keep both of them in your mind. Whichever strikes you in the examination hall, start solving with it. And if you practice more, you'll be eventually come to know which one is quicker, right? But that only comes with the experience of solving a lot of questions. All right, so practice as much as you can. Okay. So this type of questions are actually a very popular trend with the JEE examination. What do we have? They have combined the concept of matrix along with some other concept. And in this particular question, with the concept of a bit of complex number, you can say, or you can say that like the information with the, you can say the quadratic or something. All right, so very simple. And just understand what the question says. It says that let alpha be a root to the equation x square plus x plus 1 equal to 0. This is a very popular equation and I am expecting that every one of you must be remembering the roots of this equation. What are the roots of this equation? X square plus x plus 1 equal to 0. The roots of this equation are nothing but omega and omega square. As simple as it looks like, these are nothing but the imaginary or the complex cube roots of unity. All right. Okay. So cube roots of unity are 3, 1 omega and omega square. So the imaginary ones are omega and omega square. So this equation essentially gives me the roots as omega and omega square. Perfect. So basically the value of alpha is nothing but omega. So it says that alpha is the root of this equation. So I can choose alpha as omega or omega square. Doesn't matter, right? That's not going to change my answer. So I can choose either of them. Let's say if I take alpha to be omega only, and I'll be solving my question in that style itself. All right, everyone, please be ready with your pen and paper. I've given you a slight of hint. Just try to put it up in this way, whether you are able to crack it now or not. And everyone else, if you're not able to understand even, or if you're not able to generate the thought, please wait for some more discussion. All right, and there is nothing wrong in this, right? It's absolutely fine. You have to absorb what I'm teaching so that in near future, when you come across a question of this form, you must not make any error into it. Perfect. Okay, lovely. So let's quickly begin with the solution part of it. So as I said, they say that the equation is x square plus x plus 1 equal to 0. So these are nothing but the complex cube roots of unity, which will be actually dealing with it. Now, the complex cube roots of unity are nothing but omega and omega square. So my alpha value can become either omega or omega square. Sorted. So in the place of alpha, I'll be actually using the value omega. Now my matrix A is defined as 1 by root 3 times of 1, 1, 1, 1 alpha alpha square, 1 alpha square, alpha power 4. So first thing that I have to sort it out as I'll be plugging in the value of alpha as omega. So we get this as 1, 1, 1, 1 omega omega square, 1 omega square, omega power 4. But omega power 4 is nothing but what? Omega. So I'll keep it in that way, right? See, omega power 4 is nothing but what? Omega cube into omega. And what is omega cube? 1. What do you get this as? 1 into omega or simply omega. As simple as it looks. Perfect. Okay, lovely. Now, let's quickly move on to what the question was asking. Question was asking a power 31, right? And if you remember the option, let me quickly tell you or recall you the option. So if they're asking for the value of a raised to 31, so for a raised to 31, the answers are a square, a cube, I3. Okay. This means my answer has to be like some adjustment so that the higher powers are getting dissolved to some simple numbers. Right, so something of that sort should occur. The D option is suggesting that the answer could be even an identity. So we have to keep that in mind that some standard result would have been definitely popping up, right? Something like identity or some standard matrix, which after calculation becomes very easy to simplify, right? So we'll keep that all this in your mind. Okay, sorted. Okay, let's quickly move on to it. So as I said, we were discussing this. We got the value for A. Now I have to reach to a to the power 31. So if I reach to a to the power 31, then I have to first sort it out like how does a square, a cube, etc. are behaving, right? So let's first of all begin with a square. What does a square would be? A square will be nothing but the product of this matrix 2 times, right? That is nothing but what? A into A, right? So if I plug in the value of matrix A and A, this is what I get. So 1 by root 3 into 1 by root 3 will make it what? 1 by 3. Sorted. And then this matrix is multiplied 2 times. Perfect. Now let's quickly see how does the product of this particular matrix is behaving. Okay, so 1 by 3 remains here. Now, if I take up the product, so what do I get it here? We have row by row and column by column, right? So we take up the product, you take up the first row of the left matrix and take the first column of the right matrix. So this is how we take the product. So we get this 1, 1, 1 into 1, 1, 1. So this row vector of the first matrix gets multiplied to the first column vector. So we get 1 into 1 plus 1 into 1 plus 1 into 1. That gives me what? 3. Sorted. Now, in the second one, we get this first row vector and this second column vector. What do I got? 1 into 1 plus 1 into omega plus 1 into omega square. That is, we get the second term as 1 plus omega square. Okay. What do you know about 1 plus omega square? This is also a very popular result. That 1 plus omega square is nothing but what? 0. It's a very simple result. So I can say that the second term immediately becomes 0. Sorted? Okay, let's go quickly for the third one. So I have this again, this row vector 1, 1, 1 and the column vector as 1 omega square omega. So the next term becomes is equal to 1 plus omega square plus omega. Again, the value becomes what? 0. All right, now I'll quickly write it. So first 3 terms I've shown you. Now what will happen? This row vector, the second row vector will be multiplied to the column vector of the next matrix. That is first column vector, second column vector and third column vector. That is 1 plus omega square. So this value again becomes 1 plus omega square. Okay. Similarly, if I take up the second row and the second column, what do I get? I get 1 plus omega square plus omega power 4. That is again nothing but 1 plus omega square plus omega. The next one is 1 omega square and then it is multiplied to 1 omega square omega. What do I get? I get this as 1 plus omega cube plus omega cube. What is omega cube? 1. So basically the last term becomes 1 plus 1 plus 1. 3. Sort it out, right? Similarly, I'm leaving the rest of the calculation on you. I hope you can figure it out. So when you do all the calculation, so 1 omega square, this value gives me 0. This value again gives me 3 and this value gives me 0. Right. So I can say that, or I can infer from here that my value of a square will become nothing but as 1 by 3 times of the matrix 3, 0, 0, 0, 0, 3 and 0, 3, 0. I can easily take that 3 out of this matrix, right? 3 is common from every element. So when I take up 3 common, we get 3 into 1 by 3, so that 3 get cancelled. What will I be having here? I'll be having this is equal to 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1 and 0, 1, 0. Sorted. So we got the value for a square as 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1 and 0, 1, 0. This is not identity, right? So be careful. This is not identity, right? So I have to look for some further possibilities. How does this behaving? So if I'm assured of a square, let's quickly find out the further even powers. What happens if I have a square into a square? See, checking out a cube here will not be a good idea because a cube will also involve the element of 1 omega square. So it will not give me that repetitive patterns. Here, everything is free from omega. We got all these simple real numbers, purely real numbers, right? So it is always advisable that you sort out the further even powers of a first of all. Okay, so keeping that object into our mind, we got the value of a square is this. So let's quickly understand how does this a raised to 4 behaves. So a raised to 4 is nothing but what? This is simply a square into a square. Right? So I can just plug in the values for a square and a square. So I have two matrices multiplied together. Perfect, I multiplied them. Let me quickly see how does the multiplication behaves. So when I multiply them, what do I get? Again, if I take up the row vector and I take up the column vector, so I got 1 into 1 plus 0, that is 1. Okay, then again 1, 0, 0 with 0, 0, 1, that gives me 0, 0. So when you try to find it out, it will actually turn out to be 0, 1, 0 and 0, 0, 1. Uh-oh, do you know this guy? Yeah, this is a very popular one. So I can say that my a raised to 4 becomes nothing but is equal to 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, which is nothing but the identity matrix. So a raised to 4 becomes I. Congratulations, guys. Now you're about to solve the problem. So if I have a raised to 4 is equal to identity matrix, what do I have it here? A raised to 4 equal to I have to predict the values for what? A raised to 31. Okay. So if a raised to 31 is there, see, a raised to 31 I have to reach. I know that a raised to 4 is I. So I'll try to utilize that a raised to 4. So the multiples of a raised to 4 will be a raised to 28 into a cube. So let's quickly figure out what is a raised to 28. It's pretty simple to handle. So a raised to 28 is nothing but what? That is nothing but a raised to 4 raised to 7. or a raised to 4 7 times, which is more or less the same thing, right? What is a raised to 4? Identity. What is identity raised to any natural power? Gives me the same matrix I3 or identity. Identity matrix of order 3, the one which is written here, right? Perfect. Lovely. Now I have to figure out that a raised to 31. Sorted. So a raised to 31, a raised to 28 is I. This is a cube. So this becomes is equal to nothing but I into a cube. Okay. So a raised to 31 becomes I into a cube. What is identity into any matrix? It gives you that same matrix only, which eventually becomes equal to what? A cube. Hence, I would say that a raised to 31 becomes nothing but equal to a cube. Can you see that question? The calculation is extremely simple. It's just that you have to be logical about how am I going to reach to the 31 power. And one thing is pretty sure, if the answer is turning out to be a square, a cube, or identity, then one thing is pretty sure that some of the patterns will definitely become pretty much easier to handle. Or maybe if you put it up, see, it's not a law or something, but chances are very, very high that any of the even power or odd power eventually in such type of question will become as identity. All right. So effectively, I'll be taking the C option as the answer. The key takeaway was that first of all, you need to remember that for the moment you see this equation, x square plus x plus 1 equal to 0, roots are omega and omega square. And when you plug in this value, if they're asking for a raised to 31, options are in this format. Chances are very high, either some even power or some odd power will actually conform to somewhat related to identity matrix or anything which is very easily solvable, free from omega things, right? Perfect. All right.